why did all of my trans friends from 2020 detransition in 2025? Me watching all my trans friends from 2020 detransition in 2025.
I lived as a trans woman from ages 19 to 26, and I recently detransitioned about 6 months ago.
That's not something that a child can consent to. Losing the ability to give vaginal birth, to urinary incontinence and pelvic floor dysfunction.
I did not consent to all of these health issues. I did not consent to my throat essentially being permanently crushed for the rest of my life.
No, because why did all of my trans friends from 2020 detransition in 2025? Me watching all my trans friends from 2020 detransition in 2025. This is all over TikTok and people are very confused, right? People are very bewildered, befuddled, about why all of their trans friends or all the people in their school are now detransitioning. And they all started in that time period of 2020, of COVID, which I have at length gone into the psychology of that. Trauma, right? Everything comes down to trauma, really. But, these people would not be confused if they had ever clicked on a Blaire White video for the past decade. If they'd ever subscribed to this channel or my main channel. So you guys know, though, it's not just jokes and memes and all the trans people are not trans anymore from COVID. It's also people posting their stories that are really sad and deserve to be highlighted and often aren't. People whose bodies and health and lives are jacked up. And I try not to be mean about that. You guys know that's not my spirit towards them. I support them, but we're going to watch those today.
They told you what was going to happen before you started testosterone. So really, it's your fault. You should have been paying more attention. See, but they didn't, though. They told me the outwardly observable effect that I would immediately notice, like that my voice was going to drop, not that my vocal cords were going to dramatically thicken, and that a lot of women's larynxes aren't big enough to accommodate that thickness, meaning that my voice just always hurts. I snored last night, apparently, because my throat has hurt all day. It also means that I can't scream or raise my voice above a certain volume. I used to do theater. They knew that. That was something very important to me. And I've lost that ability because I can't project my voice anymore. Losing the ability to give vaginal birth.
Every January, we all tell ourselves the exact same thing. This year, I'm gonna quit. And then that first craving kicks in and you find yourself reaching for that same old habit. And that's because most New Year's resolutions fail for the same reason. Because we try to remove a habit without replacing it. And that is where Fume comes in. Fume is a flavored air device designed to help people move away from smoking and vaping by breaking the hand-to-mouth pattern. No nicotine, no batteries, no vapor. Just clean, natural flavors. And a weighted, fidget-friendly design that actually feels good to use. For me, the biggest surprise was how often I reach for it just to fidget with it. That moment when your hands are busy and that craving just passes is exactly how it works. And especially for the first month, for January, start of the year, where a lot of people make resolutions and they fall by the wayside. But this can be different this time. My favorite flavor right now is definitely the crisp mint. It just feels like a wonderful reset. But I also love peach blush, which is sweet, but not candy-like, if that makes sense. And the limited time gingerbread flavor is perfect. I love that one too. And right now, Fume is going all in for January. And for this month only, every core you order is doubled. Buy 1 pack, you get 2. Buy 3 packs, you get 6. Plus, when you grab a Journey pack, you'll get a free Fume topper if you use my code. But this double cores offer, that ends the moment January ends. So you gotta get on it. So do not wait. Head to tryfume.com, that's tryfum.com, and use code Blaire White Project to claim your double cores and also your free Fume topper. Make sure you do it before the New Year offer is gone. Thank you so much to Fume for sponsoring this episode of the Blaire White Project podcast. And now on to the rest of the podcast.
To urinary incontinence and pelvic floor dysfunction. I've seen a lot of informed consent packets from these gender clinics, and I have never seen one actually go into detail about what vaginal dryness entails. It's also crazy to me to imply that I, as a 14-year-old 8th grader, or the kids that they do this to are as young as 11, could comprehend the lifelong implications of being incontinent and not being able to have penetrative sex or give birth vaginally. That's not something that a child can consent to.
Period. And you guys know I've told this a few times about my own story of transitioning, which I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum, someone who is happy with mine, but you can still see commonalities, and I relate to some of the things that this person is saying, because I was never told when I transitioned that it was going to make me infertile or, you know, I guess the word would be sterile for me. I don't really know, but that's probably something I should have known. But even at age 20, I just wasn't thinking about that. And so I should have been told that. I also talk about how I was put on hormones in just a 15-minute appointment with no therapy, no anything, no requirements. And so this is what happens. Here's the other thing that I feel like people just don't talk about. And it's a very like nuanced part of this. And so it's just not common, but transitioning from female to male, from everything that I've seen, you guys know I've interviewed people, I've talked to people, I've researched this topic. From everything I've seen, transitioning from female to male is so much more dangerous than male to female. It's not that there's not pitfalls to both, obviously, but the thing that she mentioned about, you know, the size of her throat not being able to hold the vocal cord growth, you know what I mean? Like, that's something that's so complicated and sort of like, there's just no equivalent to that, in my opinion, as someone who has obviously transitioned and been transitioning for a decade on the other side, the male to female side. So that is crazy to hear. Also, the inability to have sex, like, I mean, it kills your libido if you're male to female, but it doesn't make you bleed through intercourse. This is such a, oh my God, it's a graphic ass video. You know, it just seems much more extreme and disaster prone female to male. And that's not something that really gets talked about by either side, because if you're, you know, someone who is blasting the entire concept of transitioning, for which I have my qualms with it, obviously, but for me, it worked out, then you're probably just going to want to say it's horrific problems for both sexes when they attempt to transition. But that's not as honest as saying it's more actually complicated and disastrous female to male. And so I think that females who are thinking about transitioning deserve to have that data and that knowledge. That is insane. And to go through it when you're a teenager. You know, I know there's this whole narrative that this is like over because Trump has been in office for a year, like this problem magically goes away, but California is still a sanctuary state, and I will be changing that now that I'm home, by the way. California is still a sanctuary state for trans kids. Sex changes are still, you know, being done for minors all across the country. Here is a male to female, male to female.
I lived as a trans woman from ages 19 to 26, and I recently detransitioned about 6 months ago. And I'm going to talk about why that happened and kind of what the f is wrong with me that I did that. So growing up, everyone always told me I was gay. The first time that happened, I was in first grade, and it got progressively worse my whole life. And then when I was in high school, this was around, so I graduated in 2016, to give you a kind of rough estimate of the time frame. The same time that like Orange is the New Black was on, Laverne Cox was becoming popular, Caitlyn Jenner transitioned, like this was like considered kind of like there was a boom around trans awareness. I was just a weird kid. I didn't fit in. It didn't make sense. I didn't make sense to everyone. So whenever people became more and more aware of transness, like people started to kind of suggest it to me, like, hey, like, do you think you might be trans? Or I had one friend in high school who was like, I know that you're going to transition. My aunt said that she thought that I was going to transition. It was weird. So it was like suggested to me a bunch of times. And then in like a moment of desperation, I was like getting out of a psych ward when I was 19. I thought maybe that like unfillable pit in my stomach is because I'm supposed to be a woman. And if I can just...
Number one, the fact that, and mind you, I'm not making fun of this person. This is sad. The fact that you were getting out of a psych ward for presumably a separate issue and someone still let you transition is insane. I also remember people assuming that was going to be my trajectory in life, and they were correct. But there also is, I believe it's this phrase called cracking the egg. Makes me want to vomit. It's like a Reddit, you know, queer loser term where you crack the egg, you like birth somebody into like being trans, convince them. It's very disgusting. It's very bizarre. And why people feel like they even have the right to push someone in a certain direction for their life is disturbing. Because as you can see, this person was having other mental health issues and then really took that to heart.
Achieve that goal and chase that dream, then it'll kind of fix everything. So you might be asking yourself, well, okay, well, Diva, why did it go on for 7 years? And how did you come to the realization that you weren't actually trans? The answer to that question is mental illness. So I had a mental break about a year ago, and it precipitated in me getting diagnosed with OCD and getting on treatment. Right now, I take like a massive dose of an SSRI, and it really fixed my brain. And a lot of things to me became very obvious very quickly.
Yeah. So this is a person with clearly a lot of different comorbidities, which is super common in trans people, but also, especially when it comes to detrans people, what I've noticed is they will often have other issues, especially related to body. He talked about hating himself and his body and his features, anorexia, all those sorts of things that come with it. So this is what happens. And it's so crazy because I know that it comes out extremely hypocritical from me, but that's the beauty of life, right? That I am such an anti-medicalization person in general. I'm the kind of person who I'm glad that they benefited you in some ways, but I don't really believe in SSRIs. I don't really believe in necessarily OCD medication, all of these things. If they've helped people personally, love it. And I support that you're taking them. Just like for me on an individual level, transition has helped me personally. But this mass, marketing of all these drugs is partly what's so horrible. I tell this story all the time, how when I was younger, they tried to diagnose me with OCD. And I probably do have a little bit of OCD, but not to the point, this is when I was a kid, where I need to be on some sort of drug for it. Those to me are always last resorts. And especially when it comes to transition, people just leap into it. You know what I mean? And it's just such an individualistic thing. That's why I've never promoted it. I just say it worked for me, keyword me. Because mind you, the way people in the trans community tend to talk is very collectivist, right? It's very blue coded or blue pilled. It's very lib coded because they're all libs. It's always we as a community, we benefit from this. We believe in this. We do this, us. The only pronouns I'm going to be offended by you using for me is us, we, because do not include me in whatever collective. My pronouns are not us and we. I'm one person.
Oh, but you consented. You consented as a teenager. Therefore, you consented for the rest of your life. No, actually, I did not consent to all of these health issues. I did not consent to my throat essentially being permanently crushed for the rest of my life.
They keep saying that. Oh my gosh. You see how not for nothing, I have a lot of empathy for the guy in the last video too, obviously, but the male to females, like I said, don't have the same sort of crushing physical health issues. It's when the female detransitioners come out, the first thing they say is hey, so my throat is crushed. You know what I mean? Real quality of life stuff. So that's the point I was making earlier.
It hurts to speak. Every word I speak, I struggle to enunciate my words. Projecting is its own hell. The phlegm that builds up, drinking anything aside from water, I will immediately cough and continue to cough. Some foods hurt to swallow. My singing voice, the one natural God-given talent I had from a very young age, completely dead and gone. And God forbid I decide to speak the whole day. Just speak normally. The next day, the next morning especially, will be hell. I did not consent to that. You know what I did consent to? I consented to, oh, your voice will just get deeper. It'll just get deeper, just like a boy going through puberty. I am not a boy, and I never was. Physically, my female body cannot accommodate expanded vocal cords. It's not made to do that. I also didn't consent to the chemical damage. You told me the only thing that would happen is, oh, your clit will grow. It'll just grow a little bit. Okay, but you didn't tell me about everything else. You didn't tell me that my discharge would disappear, that my scent would disappear, that my arousal would be completely gone unless I were being physically stimulated by someone else. You didn't tell me that my sense of pleasure would go from 100% include.
If it makes you feel any better, wherever you are out there, to this girl, your voice actually, in my opinion, is very beautiful. Like, it's very sultry. It's very, like, at least on a superficial level, I'm not hearing or sensing like the damage that's been done. Not that I don't obviously believe it. I will say this also, Buck Angel has done so much to talk about, in particular, the female to male damage. Buck's told several stories about almost dying due to the damage done. And this is also somebody who does not regret transitioning, Buck Angel. Shout out to Buck, by the way. I love Buck. But at the same time, just wants the full story to be told. And you know what's so sad is, like, so the other day, I was actually researching getting on like a different form of hormones. I won't get into the nitty gritty, but I was researching taking something different. There's just such little actual clinical studies done on the medications that are an option for me. And it's because the politicization of this topic has affected the medical arena so much that even just as someone who take my career, my everything out of it, just like as an actual patient of an endocrinologist, like, I can't even ask certain questions. It becomes taboo. Things are not studied well enough. Like, every part of it does a disservice to the people that they're claiming to help. Not just the detransitioners, but also trans people who just want a full scale, set of information on the pros and cons to everything. Like, even if it's an adult, if you're not given all of the data, then how are you consenting? It's like signing a contract where you don't get to read half of it. Like, that's just not how it works. And so God bless these people. I support these people wholly. I will always share their stories. And for any trans people who have an issue with that, like, I just think it's so ignorant to believe that someone else's story takes anything away from yours, right? Thank you so much to Fume for sponsoring this episode of the Blaire White Project podcast. Make sure you check them out in the link below or scan the QR code somewhere on the screen. Follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all the things. Subscribe to this channel as well as my main channel, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.